Imagine the moonlit tobacco fields of Virginia, silent as a grave, until a shadow stirs, a man with fire in his eyes, whispering prophecies of blood and redemption. In 48 hours, he'd unleash divine fury, erasing families in their sleep, forcing a nation to face its original sin. But was he a monster or God's avenging angel? Feel the chill as heaven's judgment descends. The air hung thick with the scent of damp earth and wilting tobacco leaves, a suffocating blanket over Southampton County, Virginia, in the summer of 1831. The land itself seemed weary, scarred by generations of relentless cultivation, where the soil gave up its riches only under the lash of forced labor. Here, in this flat, humid expanse, dotted with pine thickets and snaking rivers, the contradictions of America festered like an open wound. A nation born of lofty ideals, liberty, equality, yet built on the bent backs of the enslaved. The Declaration's ink had barely dried when the chains multiplied, and now, in this quiet corner of the Tidewater, those chains were about to snap with a violence that echoed the wrath of ancient biblical plagues. Picture the scene. Twilight creeps over the horizon, casting long shadows across modest farmhouses with their weather-clabbered walls and flickering lantern light spilling from cracked windows. Inside, white families sup on cornbread and salted pork, oblivious to the gathering storm. Outside, in the slave quarters, crude cabins of rough-hewn logs, roofs leaking with every rain. The air buzzes with whispered fears and fragile hopes. This was no hellish rice swamp of Carolina, nor the vast cotton kingdoms rising in the deep South. Southampton's slavery wore a subtler mask, smaller holdings, where owners prided themselves on kindness, meager rations without the whip's constant bite. But kindness in bondage is a cruel illusion, a velvet glove over an iron fist. Families torn asunder for profit, bodies sold like livestock to distant lands, the ever-present dread of the auction block. It was a system rooted in sin, a defiance of the divine order where all souls are equal before God. In this moral quagmire, on October 2nd, 1800, Nathaniel Turner entered the world, not as a free child, but as property on Benjamin Turner's farm. His cries echoed through the dim cabin, mingling with the distant hoot of owls and the rustle of leaves in the night wind. His mother, Nancy, stolen from Africa's shores, cradled him close, her dark eyes burning with a legacy of resistance. She whispered tales of her homeland's free winds, instilling in her son a soul-deep revulsion for the chains that bound them. His father, a shadow in history's margins, vanished into the northern mists when Nat was young, a ghost teaching the boy that liberty was no myth, but a prize seized at peril's edge. Nat grew under the son's merciless gaze, his small hands blistering in the fields, but his mind soared beyond the furrows. From his earliest days, Nat was marked, touched by something otherworldly. He spoke of visions, glimpses of realms unseen, where spirits danced in the ether. As a boy, he'd recount events from before his birth. The great storm that felled the old oak by the river, the fever that claimed old Master Turner's kin. His words fell like revelations, unsettling the elders who gathered around the fire's glow. The child's got the sight. They'd murmur, eyes wide in the flickering light. Some called him prophet, a title heavy with biblical weight, evoking Moses in the bulrushes or Elijah's fiery chariot. The white Turners, amused by his precocity, allowed him scraps of education, letters scratched in the dirt, pages from a tattered Bible. Nat devoured the good book, its verses searing into his soul like brands. Genesis creation, Exodus deliverance, the prophets' cries against injustice. They became his compass, his weapon. But knowledge in chains breeds torment. Nat's intellect sharpened his awareness of the abomination around him. Men treated as beasts, women as vessels for breeding more property, children ripped from mothers' arms. The spiritual chasm yawned wide. How could a loving God permit such evil? In his teens, the visions intensified. He'd wander the woods at dusk, where sunlight pierced the canopy like golden spears, and hear whispers on the wind, echoes of Scripture, promises of reversal. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Matthew's words haunted him, a divine mandate for upheaval. Guilt gnawed at the edges of his faith, not his own, but the collective sin of a nation that twisted God's image into merchandise. At 21, the breaking point came. Inherited by Samuel Turner, Benjamin's son, Nat felt the noose tighten. The farm's routines ground him down. Dawn-to-dusk toil, the overseers barked orders, the sting of casual cruelties. One moonless night, he slipped away, melting into the shadows of the great dismal swamp, a labyrinth of cypress knees and murky waters, where runaway souls hid like phantoms. For 30 days, he tasted freedom's bitter-sweet nectar, foraging berries under starlit skies, drinking from hidden springs, his heart pounding with exhilaration and terror. The swamp's mists enveloped him, a veil between worlds, where the line between life and eternity blurred. But then, in the depths of solitude, a vision descended like thunder. A radiant figure appeared amid the fog, voice booming. Thou hast sought the vanities of this world. Return to thy earthly master, for thy work is in the kingdom to come. Nat wrestled with it, tears streaming down his dirt-streaked face. Was this madness or God's inexorable will? He returned, chains clinking anew, to the astonishment of his fellows. Why come back? They'd whisper in the quarters, eyes filled with pity and confusion. But Nat knew. His path was not solitary flight, but collective salvation. He was no fugitive. He was an instrument of divine retribution. Years passed in a haze of labor and longing. Sold again in 1830 to Joseph Travis, a wheelwright wed to Nat's legal owner, Sally Moore, Nat found a master deemed fair by slavery's twisted measure. No gratuitous floggings. Portions that staved off starvation. Yet the cage remained, gilded perhaps, but unyielding. Travis's workshop smelled of fresh-sawn wood and iron filings, where Nat hammered wheels under the hammer of oversight. His family, wife Cherry, their 2 children, languished nearby on Giles Reese's farm, close enough for stolen glances, far enough to rend the heart. Visits were fleeting, under the moon's pale watch, where they'd clasp hands and dream of a world without masters. But slavery's economics devoured even these bonds. In February 1831, Reese's son pawned Nat's own boy as debt collateral, a child reduced to currency, a profane echo of Judas's 30 pieces of silver. Nat's blood boiled with righteous fury, a storm building in his spirit. Then the heavens spoke. On February 12, 1831, an annular eclipse gripped the sky over Southampton. The sun, that eternal symbol of God's light, darkened at its core, ringed by ethereal fire. To the whites, a curiosity noted in journals. To Nat, a portentous sign, a black hand eclipsing the oppressor's dominion, heralding judgment. He fell to his knees in the field, the earth cool beneath him, as whispers filled his ears. The yoke shall be broken. Biblical imagery flooded his mind. Pharaoh's plagues, the Red Sea's parting. This was no mere astronomical quirk. It was divine writ, etched in celestial ink. The time for waiting ended. Liberation's hour approached, not as escape, but as holy war against the sin of bondage. Nat moved with the caution of a hunted deer, confiding only in souls forged in the same fire. He selected 4. Hark, dubbed Hercules for his monolithic strength, his muscles corded from years of hauling timber. Henry, steady as the river's flow, enslaved on a neighboring plot. Nelson, with nerves of tempered steel, unflinching in crisis. Sam, quick and loyal, from a farm abutting Travis's. These men gathered in hushed clearings, under canopies of whispering pines, sharing bread and resolve. They knew the stakes. Failure meant not just death, but erasure, their names blackened, their kin punished in reprisal. Yet something burned brighter than fear, the spark of dignity, the biblical promise of justice. Better to die free than live in chains. Nat intoned, his voice a low rumble, eyes alight with prophetic zeal. They plotted meticulously, maps scratched in the dirt by firelight. The initial strike, Independence Day, July 4th, 1831, a poetic irony, mocking the nation's hypocritical festivities. Fireworks for the free, while the enslaved toiled in silence. But illness felled Nat, a fever that racked his body like demonic possession, delaying the divine plan. They waited, refining tactics, stealing hearts. Then, August 13th, the sun shifted hue, a sickly bluish-green, as if poisoned by heavenly decree. Letters from whites described the eerie glow. Historians later blamed volcanic ash from distant Sicily. To Nat, it was confirmation, the atmosphere itself bending to God's will, a veil torn to reveal impending doom. Sunday, August 21st, dawned oppressive, heat shimmering off the fields like waves of judgment. The air pressed heavy, laden with the buzz of cicadas and the distant lowing of cattle. That afternoon, the core group, now joined by Jack, heartskin by marriage, and Will, a cauldron of suppressed rage hired to Nathaniel Francis, convened near Cabin Pond's murky depths. Hidden in the wood's embrace, they roasted a pilfered pig over a smoldering fire, the crackle of fat and scent of smoke masking their murmurs. Faces illuminated by dancing flames, they outlined the audacious scheme. Strike under night's cover, house by house, silencing slaveholders in their slumber. Gather arms, horses, recruits. March on Jerusalem, seize the armory's arsenal. From there, ignite a conflagration across the South, retreating if needed to the great dismal swamps, impenetrable wilds, a natural fortress where militias feared to tread. As midnight neared, a solemn hush fell. Nat led a prayer, voice rising, like incense. Lord, guide our hands in this righteous fury. Let the blood of the oppressors wash away the sins of generations. Hearts pounded in unison, a drumbeat of destiny. They were no longer chattel. They were avengers, embodiments of divine equity. The moral weight pressed. Each life taken was a strike against iniquity, but the soul's toll loomed. Would redemption await, or eternal reckoning? At 2 a.m., August 22nd, they crept toward Travis's farmhouse, shadows merging with the night's velvet dark. The building loomed, a silhouette against starry heavens, windows dark as empty eyes. A ladder scraped softly against the wall, would groaning under Nat's weight as he ascended. Slipping through the upper window, his boots whispered on the plank floor. Heart thundering, he navigated the familiar gloom. Past the kitchen's cold hearth, the scent of yesterday's stew lingering, to unlatch the door. His comrades entered like ghosts, Hart's bulk filling the frame, Will's axe glinting in moonlight. The family slumbered in innocence's guise, Joseph Travis and Sally in their bed, linens rumpled, young Putnam more nearby, apprentice Joel Westbrook in a corner cot, the infant in its cradle. Nat's hand trembled on the hatchet's handle, visions flashing, biblical Samson slaying Philistines, yet his own role as reluctant executioner. He swung, but the blow glanced, Travis jolting awake with a guttural cry. Will surged forward, axe descending in a merciless arc, blood sprayed, warm and metallic, staining walls in abstract patterns of retribution. Sally stirred, eyes widening in terror. Another swing silenced her pleas. Putnam and Joel followed, their youthful forms crumpling. Then, the cradle, a moment's hesitation, then resolve. No survivors, no alarms. The act, clinical in records, seared with spiritual gravity, a necessary purge, echoing Herod's slaughter, but inverted, the innocent fallen to free the oppressed. They claimed spoils, flintlocks, powder horns, horses stamping in the stable. In the yard, as dawn's first blush kissed the east, Nat brandished Travis's sword, a relic of colonial wars, now tool of liberation. He drilled his men. Formations crisp, steps synchronized, mimicking white militias seen on muster days. Austin, Travis's enslaved hand, emerged from shadows, joining without word. 8 now, a band forged in blood. Onward they pressed, the night's chill yielding to morning's haze. At Salathiel Francis's humble stead, a single-room cabin, roof sagging, they dispatched the lone white owner in his bed, sheets tangling in his thrash. His enslaved man fled into the underbrush. Shots cracked, bark splintering, but he vanished. Speed versus mercy. They chose haste, leaving potential witnesses in God's hands. Nat's path veered past Piety Reese's farm, where Cherry and his children endured. His heart twisted, a vision of their faces, lit by Huth fire, smiles rare as stolen freedoms. Yet he bypassed sordid side. To linger was peril. Family slowed the divine march. Was it sacrifice or providence shielding them from carnage? The choice haunted, a personal crucifixion amid collective resurrection. At Reese's, they struck. Piety and her son felled. The overseer wounded grievously, groaning in the dust. Blood pooled on packed earth, steam rising in the cool air, a sacrament of sorts offering to justice's altar. By mid-morning, ranks swelled. Farms yielded recruits. Men dropping hoes, eyes alight with long-buried fire, joining the ragged column. Others demurred, fears chains stronger than iron, loyalty, paralysis, or dread of reprisal. The rebels respected choice, but their shadow doomed all blacks by proximity. Sin's web entangled everyone. At Elizabeth Turner's spread, widow and neighbor Mrs. Newsom perished. Overseer Hartwell Peebles cut down. The group fractured. Hark led 6 afoot to Henry Bryant's. Nat commanded 9 mounted toward Catherine Whitehead's. Whitehead's farm sprawled, a testament to inherited wealth. Whitewashed house, barns heavy with harvest. Widow Catherine, her aged mother, son Richard for daughters, a grandchild, all within. The assault swift. Doors breached, screams piercing the humid air. Chaos reigned, bodies falling amid overturned furniture, the metallic tang of blood mingling with lavender sachets. Nat, sword in hand, confronted Margaret Whitehead, fleeing to the woods. Pursuit through brambles, thorns tearing flesh. He cornered her by a split-rail fence, rail crashing down, then Blade's final mercy. His sole direct kill, confessed later. A burden shouldered to affirm leadership, or perhaps to atone through action. Why delegate death? Visions guided strategy, not slaughter. His soul navigated the moral abyss, balancing prophet's call with human frailty. Noon brought tally. 45 souls claimed across sun-baked fields. 60 rebels now. Mounted chargers thundering, footmen trudging, arsenal eclectic. Axes dripping, guns primed, sides repurposed. Toward Jerusalem they surged, past grander plantations ripe for uprising. But whispers outpaced them. Escapees on horseback, alarms raised. Whites barricaded, militias mustered. Surprise evaporated like morning dew. The unraveling loomed. 3 miles from Jerusalem, first resistance coalesced. Armed whites in hasty line, muskets gleaming. Dread mingled with defiance. Would this spark revolution, or drown in blood? The air crackled with tension, a spiritual crossroads where faith met fate. As this chapter closes, reflect. In Nat's shoes, visions thundering, would you wield the sword of judgment? Or in the enslavers, awakened to retribution's knock? The soul's depths reveal truths uncomfortable, eternal. The sun beat down mercilessly on the parched fields of Southampton County, Virginia, that fateful afternoon of August 22nd, 1831. A blistering heat that mirrored the inferno raging in the souls of men. Dust kicked up from horse hooves hung in the air like a veil of impending doom, as Nat Turner's band, now swollen to 60, a ragged legion armed with axes, scythes, and stolen muskets, pressed onward toward Jerusalem. The town loomed in their minds as the Promised Land's gateway, its armory a trove of weapons to fuel a wider conflagration, a biblical exodus turned uprising. Yet fate, or perhaps divine testing, intervened just 3 miles shy of their goal. At James Parker's farm, a modest spread of weathered barns and split-rail fences, a small knot of white men had barricaded themselves. Lanterns flickered in the windows, even in daylight, shadows of rifles protruding like accusing fingers. These defenders, farmers, overseers, militia veterans, crouched behind overturned wagons and hay bales, hearts pounding with the primal fear of reversal. The enslaved rising as masters of life and death. As Turner's mounted vanguard crested the rise, shouts erupted. Muskets cracked, acrid smoke blooming in puffs that stung the eyes and choked the throat. Bullets whined through the air, splintering wood and thudding into flesh. The rebels, outnumbering their foes threefold, charged with cries that echoed Old Testament fury. Roars of liberation mingled with the desperation of cornered souls. But war's grim reality crashed upon them like a thunderclap. Most had never faced return fire. Their hands, calloused from plows and hoes, trembled on triggers. Flashes from the farmhouse windows pinned them down, men crumpling in the dirt, blood soaking the earth like offerings to an angry god. Hark's massive frame shielded comrades as he bellowed orders, but chaos reigned. The whites, fortified and seasoned in hunts or skirmishes, held firm. In minutes, the assault faltered. Rebels retreated in disarray, horses rearing, footmen stumbling through brambles that tore at skin like thorns crowning a martyr. Nat Turner, sword in hand, a relic now stained with purpose, rallied them in the wood's cool shade. Pines whispered overhead, sunlight dappling the forest floor in mocking patterns of light and shadow. His voice, steady as prophecy, cut through the panic. "Stand firm, brothers. The Lord has not forsaken us." Eyes met his, some ablaze with faith, others dimmed by doubt's creeping fog. They regrouped, breaths ragged, wounds hastily bound with strips of cloth. But the spiritual armor cracked. The vision of swift victory, of multitudes flocking to the banner of freedom, wavered against the sting of lead. They veered to another farm, seeking recruits and respite, the scent of fresh hay and livestock a cruel reminder of the world they sought to shatter. Yet alarms had outpaced them on swift horses and whispered networks. White men poured in from afar, local militia in faded uniforms, volunteers from adjacent counties with grim determination etched on sun-leathered faces, even contingents crossing from North Carolina. Viewing this as apocalypse's prelude, an existential unraveling where property rose against proprietor. By evening, as crimson sunset bled across the sky like wounds unstaunched, the rebels encamped at Thomas Ridley's abandoned plantation. Grand columns of the big house stood sentinel, vines creeping up walls in nature's slow reclamation. Turner's force had dwindled to 40. Weary warriors slumping around dying campfires, the crackle of flames underscoring their hunger. Smoke curled upward, carrying prayers unspoken. Some who had joined in morning zeal slipped away under dusk's cover, melting into thickets, praying to reclaim anonymity before masters tallied absences. The night enveloped them in oppressive silence, broken by rustling leaves and distant owl hoots, every sound a potential harbinger of militia boots. Sentries paced the perimeter, eyes straining into blackness, muskets clutched like talismans. Just before dawn's gray light, a sentry's alert shattered the fragile calm. A snap of twig, perhaps deer or doom. Investigation yielded nothing, but returns sparked pandemonium. Shouts in the void, shadows mistaken for foes. Men bolted into the undergrowth, faith fracturing in terror's grip. Sunrise revealed further erosion. The holy band thinned like mist under the sun. Tuesday, August 23rd, brought one final gasp. They approached Samuel Blunt's plantation, intelligence whispering it forsaken. The house loomed, shutters barred, a fortress amid fields gone fallow in fear. But Blunt and 5 allies had hunkered within, rifles primed. As rebels advanced, cautious now, the air thick with cicadas drone, windows erupted in volley. Smoke billowed, balls tearing through ranks. Chaos swallowed order. Screams, stumbling retreats, the metallic tang of blood anew. In the melee, Nat Turner vanished from sight, separated, perhaps by divine veil or mortal confusion. The rebellion, born in midnight's resolve, dissolved in daylight's harsh glare. Less than 48 hours from its genesis, the army of judgment scattered into fragments, hunted like Cain across the verdant wilds. Small bands evaded through swamp's murky embrace, cypress knees rising like ancient guardians, waters teeming with whispers of escape. Some fell to captures or bullets, a few submerged in the great dismal's vastness, breath held against pursuit. But the storms I passed, vengeance's whirlwind descended. Word raced southward on wings of terror. Newspapers inked in frenzy, letters scrawled by trembling hands, riders thundering along dusty roads. Within days, 3,000 armed souls flooded Southampton, militia banners fluttering, federal troops in crisp lines, volunteers gripped by apocalyptic dread. The county, home to scarce 15,000, brimmed with avengers, outnumbering locals in a parody of occupation. What ensued transcended retribution, veering into profane crusade. Mobs roamed like locusts, fear fermenting into rage's bitter wine. Black skin sufficed as indictment, evidence a luxury discarded. A Richmond editor, venturing amid the carnage, penned horrors that paled rebel acts. Bodies mangled, heads impaled on roadside poles, gruesome signposts echoing biblical warnings, yet inverted in unholy mockery. Torture extracted confessions from the innocent, lashes drawing blood, implements too vile for print, souls broken on wheels of suspicion. Estimates whisper of 120 black lives extinguished in reprisal's blaze. Most uninvolved, some saviors who shielded white kin. Innocence immaterial, terror demanded sacrifice. One North Carolina company claimed 40 in a day, pockets rifled for meager coins and a gold watch. Their captain decrying not murder, but theft from owners, a chilling revelation of slavery's moral abyss. Captured rebels face courts of oyer and terminer, swift tribunals where judges, not peers, decreed fate. No juries to temper justice, proceedings clipped as guillotines. From late August to November's chill, dozens stood accused. 30 hanged, ropes creaking under weight of sin collective. Bodies gibbeted or dissected in macabre science, warnings etched in flesh. Others transported southward, chains anew to Cotton's inferno. Yet Nat Turner eluded the noose, a ghost haunting his homeland. For 10 weeks, as thousands scoured and panic gripped, he remained in Southampton, within miles of Genesis, a prophet in exile amid familiar pines. Immediate days post-collapse brimmed with peril. Woods alive with hunters, gunfire's constant echo, shots at phantoms, fugitives, or hapless wanderers. Turner's ingenuity birthed sanctuary. A storm-felled pine, roots upturned in earthen disc 6 feet wide, birthing a natural cavern. He burrowed deeper into sandy soil, lining with fragrant needles, camouflaging entrance with pilfered rails and foliage. Invisible unless foreknown, a womb of earth shielding God's instrument. 6 weeks he endured this sepulchre. August's swelter and September's damp, turning the space into a stifling tomb. Humidity clung like judgment. Darkness absolute save slivers of light. Sounds penetrated. Baying hounds, boots crunching leaves, sporadic cracks of death. Nights granted brief reprieve. He'd emerge to a nearby spring, water cool on parched lips, before retreating. No fire's comfort. Sustenance from shadowed benefactors. Enslaved souls risking lashes to leave cornbread bundles or buried yams, marked by stone patterns. One woman, unnamed in records, evaded charges. Her quiet defiance a thread of mercy in vengeance's tapestry. Psychological crucifixion compounded physical. Lying in void, Turner reckoned with fallout. Innocence slain for his vision. Kin tortured. Cherry whipped for secrets she held or feigned. Each free day prolonged suffering, yet surrender betrayed the divine call. Guilt warred with conviction. Was this Pharaoh's hardened heart, or Job's trial? Whites, meanwhile, dwelt in hysteria's grip. Generations of assumed dominion shattered. Nights sleepless, guns cocked at creeks. Families barricaded, fields untended. Rhythms halted in fear's paralysis. Rumors metastasized. Turner fled north or marshaled swamp legions. Uprisings brewed elsewhere. False whispers led to executions. 2 men hanged on a woman's dubious eavesdrop. Occupation militarized life. Checkpoints, searches invasive, interrogations brutal, whips and worse for whispers of conspiracy. Governor Floyd, pouring reports in Richmond, blamed northern agitators. Enslaved autonomy, too terrifying. Laws tightened. Movements curtailed, even white sympathizers muzzled. The South's brief introspection curdled into iron resolve. After 6 weeks, supplies dwindled, watchers too vigilant. Turner turned nocturnal, ghosting through forests, eavesdropping at property edges. Militia thinned, trials echoed from Jerusalem, comrades fallen. Close calls abounded, tree perched as dogs sniffed below, lantern swaying, near stumbling into campfire's glow. He overheard reprisals' casual recounting, jests over atrocities, human lives tallied like game. Moral scales tipped, divine ordinance weighed against profane aftermath, redemption's cost in innocent blood. Yet he lingered, never northward. Historians ponder, awaiting sparks rekindle, or bound by responsibility, flight a coward's sin? Early October birthed new refuge. Depression under another felled tree on Peter Edwards's land, proximate to origins, searched yet overlooked. He carved space to sit, foraged roots under starlight, enduring as odds mounted. October 30th dawned crisp. Farmer Benjamin Phipps, shotgun habitual now, vigilance etched permanent, traversed his bounds. An anomaly snagged gaze. Rails askew, leaves too artful. Approach cautious, weapon raised. Come out, he commanded, voice firm amid pounding pulse. Silence stretched, then rails shifted. Nat emerged, emaciated, tatters clinging to frame thinned by 30 pounds, skin etched with grime and bites. Eyes pierced still, prophet's fire dimmed by exhaustion's veil. No surprise in his bearing. Resignation, perhaps acceptance of fate's script. Phipps queried the obvious. Are you Nat Turner? A nod. No flight, no fight. As they trudged toward the house, one question escaped Turner's lips. How many of my men are still alive? Truth fell heavy, a final echo of shattered dreams. The capture closed one chapter, but the spiritual reverberations, guilt's eternal echo, justice's twisted face, redemption's elusive grace, lingered like smoke over bloodied fields. What price for freedom's cry? And who truly bore the mark of Cain? The autumn chill of late October 1831 seeped into the bones of Southampton County, Virginia, where the leaves turned blood-red under a sky heavy with unspoken dread. Fields lay untended, tobacco stalks wilting like forgotten souls, as the hunt for Nat Turner dragged into its 10th week. Whispers carried on the wind, sightings in the dismal swamp's murky depths, shadows fleeing through pine thickets. Armed patrols thundered along dusty roads, lanterns swinging in the night, dogs baying at phantoms. The county, once a patchwork of quiet farms, now pulsed with paranoia, a collective nightmare where every rustle betrayed betrayal. On the morning of October 30th, Farmer Benjamin Phipps trudged his land, shotgun slung over shoulder, eyes scanning for anomalies in the familiar terrain. Habit now demanded vigilance. The rebellion's scars ran deep. Near a fallen tree, tangled with fence rails and strewn leaves, something jarred the natural order. Rails misplaced, foliage too artfully arranged. Heart quickening, he approached, weapon raised. Come out, he called, voice steady against the pounding in his chest. Silence stretched taut as a bowstring. Then movement, rails shifting, branches parting. Nat Turner rose from his earthen tomb, emaciated and dirt-caked, clothes ragged tatters clinging to a frame wasted by famine and solitude. Insect bites marred his skin. Perhaps 30 pounds vanished in the crucible of hiding. Yet his eyes, sharp, intelligent, exhausted yet defiant, pierced like prophetic daggers. No resistance, no flight. He nodded to the inevitable question, surrendering without plea. As they walked toward the farmhouse, Turner asked only, "How many of my men are still alive?" The answer fell like a stone into still water. Most dead or dangling from ropes, their blood watering the soil of retribution. Turner said nothing more, his silence a sermon on acceptance, perhaps even triumph in the divine ledger. News ignited the county like dry tinder. By afternoon, crowds swelled from neighboring farms and towns, a throng hungry for the spectacle of the monster who'd haunted their dreams. Phipps secured Turner in a locked shed, standing guard himself amid murmurs of lynching. Calls for immediate vengeance echoed. Hang him now, spare the farce of trial. But Phipps held firm, driven by law's veneer or fear of robbing the state its due. Turner was Virginia's prize, a symbol to parade and pulverize. October 31st dawned crisp. Under heavy escort, militia rifles glinting, horses snorting steam, Turner journeyed to Jerusalem, now Cortland, the county seat. Roads lined with onlookers. Curses hurled like stones, silent stares heavy with awe or hatred. The jail rose stark, brick walls unyielding. Turner's cell a dim 8 by 10-foot crypt with one barred window, filtering meager light. Guards encircled day and night, shadows against the walls. Word of opportunity reached Thomas Ruffin Gray, a struggling young attorney with ambition's sharp edge. In Turner, he scented fortune and fame. A confession published could line pockets and etch his name. Approaching jailers with proposal in hand, Gray gained access after consultation with authorities. Over days in the cell's stifling gloom, air thick with damp stone and despair, Gray probed, cool scratching notes. Turner, chains clinking faintly, spoke freely. Nothing left to lose, perhaps everything to gain in legacy. He recounted visions vivid as lightning, spirits whispering in woods, celestial signs, a black hand eclipsing the sun, bluish-green heavens confirming doom. The cabin pond gathering, pig roasting over flames as plans solidified. The midnight strike at Travis's, hesitation yielding to resolve. Conspirators named, most already claimed by rope or rifle, no fresh betrayals. Gray pressed on regret, reprisals claiming innocent black lives. Turner's reply chilled to the marrow, no remorse. The spirit commanded, death's lamentable yet inevitable in holy war. He'd act again, unhesitating. The rebellion no defeat, but genesis, a spark for the conflagration to come, when enslaved rose as judgment incarnate. Gray's pamphlet framed Turner as fanatic, vision's mere delusion masking madness. Yet coherence shone through. A rational soul, theology forged in bondage's fire, concluding violent liberation justified over chain's slow death. Readers confronted unease. Turner no lunatic, but mirror to slavery's abomination. The Confessions of Nat Turner, rushed to print post-execution, bore Turner's mark on each page. Did he grasp Gray's profiteering, or care only for truth's echo? Why a prophet struck against sin? November 5th brought trial, swift as guillotine. No true contest, outcome etched in blood. Court-appointed Counsel James, strange French, faced impossibility. Confession ironclad, evidence mountainous, mob baying for spectacle. Courtroom crammed, travelers from afar, guards at doors, air electric with vengeance. Charges intoned, conspiring to rebel and making insurrection. Death alone awaited. Witnesses recounted sightings, carnage at farms, Turner's command. Gray's confession entered record. French offered no defense. Insanity contradicted by Turner's lucidity. Justification suicidal. Mercy pleaded futile. Judges, no jury in these Oyer and Terminer courts, deliberated briefly. Guilty. Hanging November 11th. Turner unmoved, face serene. Acceptance forged in hiding's crucible or from rebellion's dawn. Death no terror. Eternity promised better than earthly yoke. 6 days lingered. Visitors bribed entry. Gawkers feasting on notoriety. Ministers urged renunciation, blamed Satan, not God. Turner steadfast, divine will, unyielding. November 11th, noon. Gallows erected near courthouse, rough timber stark against pale sky. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, converged southeastern Virginia, North Carolina, Richmond. Anger, curiosity, a few silent mourners honoring martyr. Turner walked unaided, chains removed, pointless now. Climbed steps firm. Deputy Sheriff Edward, but's ready noose. Final repentance offered, declined. Last words, was not Christ crucified? Trap sprang. Drop swift, neck snapped. Death near instant. Body swayed hour-long, warning etched in silhouette. Cut down, horror unfolded. Delivered to surgeons, pretext study. Flayed, skin greased into macabre purses, souvenirs of supremacy. Beheaded, quartered, skull circulated relic among families' physicians. Brain probed for criminality. One alleged skull surfaced centuries later. Passed hands, donated 2002, returned descendants 2016, Smithsonian held for DNA, authenticity pending. Desecration aimed erasure. Reduce profit to curio, deny dignity. Yet inverse alchemy, attempts obliterate amplified. You slay flesh, ideas endure. Turner's symbol swelled, resistance incarnate, haunting slaveholders' conscience. Battlefields.org Gilderlehrman.org.Virginia EDUNationalgeographic.com. Reverberations thundered southward. Weeks post-rebellion, legislature scrambled, fear birthing iron laws. Virginia banned teaching enslaved literacy. Turner's Bible-fueled intellect deemed poison. Fines, imprisonment for white transgressors. Whippings, re-enslavement for free blacks. Deeper shackles. No religious gathering sans white overseer. Not minister, any adult to spy. Independent black churches crushed, sanctuaries of spirit and secret plotting raised. Gatherings over 5 illicit, lashes awaited. Movement curtailed, passes detailed destination, time, purpose, violations meant detention, flogging, owner fines. Slave patrols perpetual, poor whites paid nocturnal. Prowls, violence licensed to enforce order. Insidious reward. Informers, real or fabricated plots, gained freedom, bounty. Trust poisoned, solidarity shattered, rebellion's roots severed. Economic vice, hired out labor banned in towns, anonymity breeding conspiracy. Urban black isolation deepened, skills and meager earnings denied. Free blacks assaulted, harassed, titles contested, trades unlicensed. Hundreds fled north or Liberia, freedom's fragility exposed. Black preachers suspect, scripture interpretation monopolized, lest exodus inspire flight. Psychological scar profound. Paternalism's myth, affectionate bonds shattered. Kind Travis slain by his Nat, no master safe. Paranoia infiltrated homes. Women demanded chaperones. Weapons locked or bedside. Children taught wariness of nurturers. Intimacy turned toxin. Enslaved in bedrooms, kitchens, nurseries, handling food, cradling heirs. Now anxiety's source. Slave trade surged post. 1808 import ban. Fear accelerated separations. Families auctioned deeper south. Turner's spark illuminated slavery's rot. Not sustainable benevolence, but terror's regime. Brief emancipation debates. Virginia Assembly pondered gradual end. Curdled into fortification. Sin entrenched, justicia difert. Yet in chains tightened, prophecy fulfilled. The last inching first, retribution's seed sown. Turner's blood cried from ground, echoing eternal. Divine scales tip, oppressor's reckoning inevitable. Reflect. In his cell, facing noose, would you recant visions, or embrace crucifixion as Christ? The soul's fire, once lit, consumes empires. The gallows stood silent in Jerusalem Square, the autumn wind whispering through the rough-hewn timber where Nat Turner's body had dangled hours before, a stark silhouette against the pale November sky of 1831. His neck snapped clean, his soul, unrepentant, ablaze with conviction, ascended to whatever divine reckoning awaited. But on earth, the ripples from those 48 hours in August exploded outward, a tidal wave of terror reshaping the South's moral landscape, hardening hearts, and sealing fates for generations. In the upper South, where tidewater soils lay exhausted like sinners after confession, leached barren by centuries of tobacco's greedy harvest, planters turned desperation into profit. Virginia, cradle of presidents and paradoxes, became a breeding ground for human export. Thousands marched southward in coffles during the 1830s and 1840s, chains clinking along dusty roads, mothers clutching children soon to be wrenched away, the air thick with sobs muffled by dread. Education, nationalgeographic.orghistory.com. These sales served profane trinities: cash for indebted owners, dilution of black majorities in counties like Southampton, where enslaved outnumbered whites, and shattering of kin networks that might nurture rebellion seeds. The Deep South's cotton kingdoms, Alabama's feverish swamps, Mississippi's vast deltas, Louisiana's scorching flats, devoured them. Reputations preceded. Overseers merciless, labor backbreaking from dawn's crimson glow to dusk's weary surrender, families fragmented forever at auction blocks slick with tears. The sold South threat loomed like Damocles' sword, sharper than any lash. Parents hushed children in dim cabins, firelight flickering on weary faces. Mind your tongue, child. Obey, lest the traitor come. It destroyed not flesh alone, but spirit. Homes, communities, fragile sanctuaries built amid bondage. Nat Turner's spark ignited this furnace. Fear birthed the domestic trade's boom post, 1808 import ban, colonizing the frontier. With Virginia's blood. Yet the rebellion's deepest wound struck Virginia's fleeting conscience. Petitions flooded the General Assembly post-execution, some 2,000 signatures pleading dismantling slavery. Not firebrand abolitionists, but sober Virginians, slaveholders haunted by inefficiency, moral rot-gnawing souls. Thomas Jefferson Randolph, grandson of the Declaration's author, who'd owned hundreds while penning "All men created equal," championed gradual emancipation in January 1832. The chamber in Richmond buzzed with unprecedented candor, perhaps the South's last honest reckoning with its original sin until Appomattox's thunder. Encyclopedia Virginia.org. Debates echoed biblical thunder. Slavery degrading white labor, stagnating economy, while free North prospered. Injustice mocking God's image in man. Randolph's bill, post-enactment births freed at maturity, compensated owners, colonized afar, Liberia's distant shores, sparing whites uneasy proximity to equals. Opponents countered with economics veiled in primal terror. Cost ruinous, freed blacks' vengeful underclass. Beneath, Nat Turner's ghost-haunting halls. If enslaved rose under control, what carnage and freedom. Haitian horrors invoked, machetes flashing in Saint Domingue's night. Turner's axes as proof of inherent savagery, ignoring slavery's daily crucifixions. The vote, 73 against, 58 for. 15 flips, and history pivots, gradual end commences. But fear prevailed. The door cracked, then slammed eternal. No repeat debate. Questioning slavery grew perilous, mouths sealed by mob or law. Historians ponder. Turner's uprising rendered civil war inevitable, shattering paternalism's delusion. Enslaved content, affectionate bonds mutual. Kind, masters like Travis slain without pause. No safety in benevolence's myth. Choice stark, abolish or entrench via terror. The South doubled down, path to secession paved. Ideology mutated, from necessary evil to positive good. Pulpits thundered. Biblical sanction, Ham's curse twisted. Pseudoscience proclaimed black inferiority, servitude natural. Politicians exalted. Slavery civilized South, freed whites for equality among peers. Sectional chasm widened. North recoiled at barbarism. Abolitionists swelled, Garrison's liberator wielding Turner's tail as indictment. Southern defensiveness spiraled, compromise eroded. In Southampton, trauma festered. Black folk marked eras, before Nat's fray or after old Nat's war. Private lore exalted complex prophet, hero encoded songs, warning in whispers. Whites suppressed. Official tales stressed white victims, erased reprisals' innocence. Farms reclaimed, oaks shading blood-soaked soil. Survivors bore scars. Children hidden in swamps. Nightmares eternal. Families fled haunted homes. Vaughn's abandoned death rooms. Cherry Turner endured lashes for secrets. Yielding papers, perhaps Nat's vision scrawled. Fate obscure. Children orphaned in record, her voice silenced. History's violence in erasure. Northward, abolitionists weaponized. Slavery breeds desperation's violence. Garrison threatened, yet intensified cries. Among enslaved, Turner duel, revered in quarters hush, songs veiled praise, proving resistance viable. Blame for oppression's yoke, laws chaining all. Code whispered, old Nat threat veiled. Confessions immortalized, framed fanatic by gray. North read desperation's faith. Douglas hailed hero, resistance righteous against systemic slaughter. Legacy debates endure, fanatic or fighter. Clarity undeniable, purpose unwavering, freedom's price any blood. Facts stark, 70 rows, 55 plus whites slain, 100 to 200 blacks perished in vengeance. Most innocent, 30 hanged post-trial. Ripples, war's causes manifold, but Turner's truth foundational. Enslaved craved freedom, violently if denied. Fear drove extremes, compromise impossible. Today, Southampton tours sites. Markers belated, 1990s onward. Rebecca Vaughn House preserved, last standing witness.